Folks, welcome in to Free Money Football presented by Degenerate Danger Zone and the Trainwreck Sports Network. I am your host here, Ty B, and we got MereKat and we got some guy named Steve, and we're going to be here weekly breaking down the best bets in all of football, whether it's the NFL and college football. It's going to go a little bit like this for you guys. We're going to be on Wednesday nights just like we are here tonight, and we're going to go through what are some of the storylines going into this weekend? What are some of the early lines or the injuries to look out for? How can we take advantage of those books early? And then Saturdays, we're going to be breaking down our picks for you. We're going to give you some college picks, and we're going to lock in our picks for the weekend. But this episode is going to be a little different here. And for the preseason, it will be just like this. We're going to pick two divisions, one AFC, one NFC, and we're going to preview them for you with an eye on betting. We're trying to make you guys some free money. MereKat, I couldn't be any happier to get this show rolling. Both you, I, and Stevie have been nose deep in that Warren Sharp football guide. How are you feeling?
Man, I'm feeling good. We're right there. Football season, training camp for the Bills today opened up. You're seeing clips of Josh Allen throwing balls. I'm all the way in on football season now. Obviously, I've been waiting for it, but today cemented it. So to start this show with gambling, I'll let some demons out right now. I got a lot of them are pent up, ready to lay some hits on football this season. I'm ready to get after it early with these futures for sure.
And the best part about all of this, the one best thing, we're all perfect gamblers right now. None of us are wrong. Everything is, it's clean right now.
Half a year, yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to be getting it started with one of our favorite teams here in a minute, Steve. The Buffalo Bills, they're one of the teams to really have your eye out for all season. One of the top favorites there to win possibly a Super Bowl. I think 12-1 right now they're at. I think like fourth or fifth favorite there, Steve. What do you got here on our beloved Buffalo Bills?
I mean, the Buffalo Bills, it comes down to one man and one man only. The man we all love, who's near and dear to our heart. It's Josh Allen. He's taken a step forward every single year, and there's really nothing showing that he's not going to take another step forward this year. I don't know how he possibly could get better than last year, because last year he was incredible, had a few MVP votes. But he adds another weapon to, his arsenal this year with Emmanuel Sanders. You got that with Gabe Davis, who I think is going to take a big step forward this year. Cole Beasley, Stephon Diggs. The Bills' offense is going to be absolutely dominant. I personally like the running back committee of Zach Moss, Devin Singletary, and now Matt Breida added, who's going to be all three guys can catch the ball. They can be used in the passing game. Breida and Singletary especially. The Bills, it's hard for us on this show, right, to, not hype up the Bills too much. I believe their win total's right around 11 right now. It'd be foolish not to take the over there. But, this is a pro-Bills pod. We've always been about it. And they've added a little bit of, pass rushers, especially in the draft. Greg Rousseau, who has got a very, very high ceiling out of Miami. He could really help the Bills. That was probably their biggest weakness to a point last year, was getting after opposing quarterbacks, causing havoc. And if they can take a step forward in that department, then the sky's the limit for the Bills, and they could make a serious, serious case at, getting to a Super Bowl.
Absolutely. And MereKat, you do a lot of talking about the Bills on the Crowd Assist podcast, which you guys make sure you tune in for. They've been doing great work, him at Wake and Kevin Massari over there. And it looks like one of these years where they could really be poised for a run. We saw it last year. We saw them get to 13 wins. This year, 17 games. So an even, easier chance to get over 11 wins. Sitting right there, even money either side. And, there's nothing real big to talk about roster-wise. I mean, you lose Smokey Brown, you just replace him with Emmanuel Sanders, and you add to that pass rush that had been lacking last year. The one thing you probably really needed to improve most on, MereKat.
Yeah, straight up, it opened at 10.5. It's at 11 now for their win total. I still think 11 is kind of disrespectful, even with a 17-game schedule. This is an AFC championship contending team right here that kept all of its major pieces together, somehow kept both Brian Dable and Leslie Frazier as their assistant coaches. They only added. They only got better. They got deeper, and they got younger, and they got rid of bad salaries. They have relationships between these guys now. Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs were best friends after a few months last year, and you saw the connection they had. Now imagine that relationship this year and what they're ready to do after a year of work in an off season of, somewhat normalcy. So I think, anything under 11 wins would be considered a failure of a season for the Bills, even if it still gets us into the playoffs. So I'm all over that over there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm on it too, but I just want to nitpick a little bit. Looking at some of these key numbers here, you went from 28% pre-snap motion frequency to 45% last year, from 19 to 20, and they had a lot of success in 2019 with pre-snap motion, something they should have used more. They tried to use it more last year, and it didn't necessarily pay off for them. Josh's, the entire team offense's EPA actually went down with pre-snap motion, whereas every other team throughout the league actually goes up. So usually you have more success essentially when you use the pre-snap motion, because you're causing the defense to make some sort of call out, some audibles, and you have to communicate, and you have to follow guys around, and that's a whole nother thing. So it leads to different issues around defensively at times, but the Bills weren't necessarily able to take advantage of that. Is that something you guys think that they could do a little bit better here, a little bit more too, because you have a guy like Isaiah McKenzie, who you think, or you would think, is perfect in this situation, but as we see by the numbers, it wasn't that great last year.
Yeah, McKenzie's role, with his pre-snap motion and stuff, I feel like it's a bit overblown just because, he's got a high percentage of it because he played a lower amount of snaps. But it's still something, that we take advantage of. We've utilized pretty well in multiple situations. And whether it's McKenzie or Stevenson, I feel like we have a guy on this roster who could be utilized in that. I maybe see a little more of it, but hey, don't fix what's not broken,
Yeah. I mean, the offense was great last year. I expect to be great again this year. If it works, it works, right? The Bills, they don't have to have, high motion all the time to be successful. I think, Josh Allen, a lot of times he can make plays on his own when, kind of shit hits the fan, and he just kind of improvises, and half the time those plays work out, especially this past season.
Yep, absolutely. And for you guys, what are your top props for the Buffalo Bills this year outside of that over 11?
I'm all over Gabriel Davis over 5.5 receiving touchdowns this year at plus money, plus 120. Last year, he had 7 touchdowns as a rookie in this offense where he played the second most snaps at receiver. They love him in this offense. He showed he could contribute, especially in the red zone. He's not the tallest guy ever. Not that he's not big. He's 6'2", nearly 220. But he has that body control. You saw with the toe drag swags multiple times, getting up above guys, the physicality. Only 35 targets last year, so 7 touchdowns on that many targets again. Not really that realistic, but I think he's going to have an increased role in this offense from the get-go. So I really like the value there, plus 120 on over 5.5.
Yeah, I'm going with a different wide receiver, but I said I liked him. I liked the signing. They brought him in for a reason. Emmanuel Sanders, over 600.5 receiving yards. He had 726 receiving yards last year in a much worse offense. The Bills love to throw. I think at some point last year they threw 20 straight times to start a game. I think the Bills are just going to continue to throw because it worked for him, and it's been working. And I think Sanders really has a chance to, not win the slot role, but become, a significant piece in the slot for the Bills this season. It only comes out to 35.5 yards a game to hit the over. I love over 600.5. And Sanders, too, even though he's older, he can be an explosive playmaker. He can, take a ball, 60, 70 yards down the field. I'm hammering over 600.5 receiving yards.
Yep, absolutely. Love that there. The Bills threw on first down more than any other team in all of football last year, and were I believe, second most efficient, or first. So absolutely, you're going to see way more of it this year. They just got to be a little better at that run on first down. But let's get into some of the Bills' competition here in the AFC East. Next up, we got the Miami Dolphins.
I mean, the Dolphins this year, it's straight up all on Tua in my book. I mean, this is my least favorite pick right now. I'm going to say right from the get-go, I think they're going to go over the 9.5 win mark, which is what we got them at here. So I'm taking them over 9.5 wins. But they made strides to get pieces around Tua this year. Adding Jalen Waddle is huge to that wide receiver core, who is incredible now. Devontae Parker, I'm a big fan of. Preston Williams as well. Will Fuller, when he's not taking PEDs and he's not suspended and he's not injured, is a good weapon to have. Lynn Bowden Jr., reborn there. Jakeem Grant. I mean, they have a good receiving core with Mike Gesicki as a reliable tight end. The offensive line's a bit, but you add Liam Eichenberg, great value where they got him in the draft, in my opinion. I had him higher up on my board. And then Matt Skura, too, another good pickup for them. This team's doing a lot of the right things, maybe not enough quite yet, but they got to make Tua comfortable, and I think they're doing that. And you look at the key numbers there, the third down passing, his yards per attempt, you saw it in his game at times. He was afraid to throw downfield. He's afraid to take those shots. When you're facing a 3rd and 8, you can't be throwing an average of 4.7 yards an attempt on third down. That's pathetic. I think he's going to be more comfortable this year. He's not going to be getting benched, for a 38-year-old Ryan Fitzpatrick having his confidence shattered. All that. He's got comfortability. He's got a good coach and a good team around him. Now the defense, if Xavier Howard leaves, it might swing a whole game for me. I might switch my stance to the under. We'll recap that later. Xavier Howard's incredible. He's such a massive part to that defense there, which is, a pretty good defense. Let's be real, but they made some good ads too. Javon Holland, another great, value pickup there at safety in the draft. And Byron Jones, I don't hate. They got Noah. I'm not even going to pronounce his last name, but you all know him. And so I don't hate the Dolphins this year. I think they're probably going to be the second best team in the AFC East.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm right there with you, MereKat, and I think you touched on every point. The big thing for me, the Dolphins did one thing this offseason. They added speed around Tua, right? Jalen Waddle and Will Fuller, those guys are burners, and people forget how good Jalen Waddle was at Alabama. He was the guy, the go-to guy before he got injured, and Devonta Smith had that incredible Heisman season. Waddle has, chemistry with Tua already. I think Waddle's going to be a really big piece, maybe a sleeper for a Rookie of the Year, even though he's not a quarterback. But I think Waddle has a monster season with the Dolphins. But it really comes down to Xavier Howard. If he wants out, we saw a couple days ago, he sent, a big note saying, I don't like my situation here. Yeah. And that's a big loss. I mean, the Dolphins had, I think, the 4th best secondary with him. Without him, that's a big loss, and that could hurt them going forward. But it comes down to Tua. I mean, he was 30th in yards per attempt last year, and if you watch the games, it seemed like he just didn't want to throw the ball more than 5 yards down the field. Could that have been because he's coming off a big injury, first time in the NFL, maybe a little nervous? I don't know. I thought he was very talented in college. I personally thought Tua was going to be good in the NFL, and I think a lot of people are giving up on him way too soon. This is basically the year that he's going to get tested, and they got him the weapons. He's got good receivers around him. The running backs, it's a disaster. I don't really like any of them, but he's got the receivers around him. It all comes down to Tua because the Dolphins aren't going to win the game running the ball.
Yeah, they're definitely going to be by committee in that backfield. I would completely stay away that, especially if you're a fantasy football player. Wouldn't touch any of those guys, any betting props either. But yeah, you put it perfectly there with Tua. He just was not understanding like a true NFL game plan. He could not read the defenses. So once they were able to key in on what he was doing, he wasn't able to get off his first read. He wasn't able to find that next guy. So he was immediately just going right to the check down, just trying to do the safest thing he could, just trying not to make a mistake. But for you guys, what's your top prop?
I'm going with Tua over 4,000.5 passing yards. I like that a lot. You take last year when he was actually given the starting role and, didn't have to worry about losing it those last 5 games. He averaged 242 yards a game. Extrapolate that over for a 17-game season. It's over 4,100 yards, which, gets you there. But that's as a rookie without, knowing your place in the team and stuff, your status, all of that. Now they've upgraded positions, especially the line and receiver. Stevie brought it up, speedy receivers who Tua, if he wants to throw it short, these guys can catch it and make their own play after. So I like Tua's position this year as the starter, a full off season with the starters and the reps, confidence behind him. They didn't draft a quarterback like people speculated. So there we go. I like him over 4,500 yards this year. I'm a Tua believer.
Yeah.
An extra game this year too, guys. Don't forget about that. That's huge, especially when making these bets. You got to make sure you add that extra game in when you're doing the math.
Yeah, and I'm kind of following with you, MereKat. I'm going with Jalen Waddle. I hyped him up before. I really think he's very talented, and he's the perfect fit for this Dolphins team and to help Tua. Devontae Parker, Preston Williams, they're great guys, but they're not burners. They're not guys who are going to get 50, 60-yard plays. Waddle has the potential to do that. He also has the potential to get like a 5-yard drag route and turn it into something special. His over is 750.5 yards. It's at even money right now. I love it. That's only 44 yards a game. As long as Waddle stays healthy, I think he's going to be maybe the number one receiver in this offense.
That's absolutely possible, and I would not be surprised about that. But another team where it seems like it's going to be reliant on their quarterback. Almost all these teams really in the East Division on both sides. Like you'll notice the trend here, but it all comes down to Zach Wilson. What are you doing at quarterback besides him? You don't really have another option. Zach Wilson has to figure it out, but guess what? He's not even under contract right now. When you're talking about this Jets team last year and how abysmal their performances were, their kicker, who played only 9 games, was their leading scorer. And their backup kicker, who only played 6 games, was their third leading scorer, and he quadrupled the guy who was in 4th place behind him. So that's how far ahead those kickers were than the rest of everyone else besides that one player. So when you're looking at this, that offense, 32nd ranked, it was just brutal. They were the most predictable offense when they got outside of 11 personnel. They overused 11 personnel. I don't understand why, when you have Chris Herndon and you had some young tight ends, you were kind of trying to groom there a little bit. Let's see what they could do, because you had guys like Jeff Smith, Braxton Berrios, Brashard Perriman playing 60 to 100% of snaps in some of these games on a regular basis. You can't do that and expect to have any quarterback go out there really and succeed. So, we'll still see what, the future has in store for Sam Darnold in terms of his performance, but he was put in some of the worst situations absolutely possible. And the efficiency, you cannot stress enough. Like Chris Herndon had 502 receiving yards in his rookie season. Last year, just 287 yards on only 8 less receptions. He had almost the same amount of targets. It's not that it wasn't there. Like it was 9 yards per attempt his rookie year, 6.4 last year, per target. So when you're looking at all this, you're saying, hey, it can't get any worse because last year they literally added negative points to their offense by passing the ball. It was that bad. Negative 43.1 points. The next lowest team was like negative 24. So that just goes to show how brutal their passing game was. It was almost 2 times worse than any other offense out there. And this is a time where passing in the NFL is at an all-time high, and teams are having their most success. We're seeing it, 70, 80% of times in some games on first down from teams like the Bills and the Chiefs. And you're going to have to adapt. That's why you go out and you get a guy like Zach Wilson. You have to believe in that, and hopefully you're able to turn around that and get some efficiency here. Steve, anything here, any hope you have for the Jets? I know it's 6 here for their over-under, but I'm still not very confident of them getting to 6 because there's so much pressure on Zach Wilson immediately.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel too. What I will say is they got the exact opposite coach of Adam Gase. Adam Gase, that failed. They went the complete opposite direction with Robert Saleh. When he was the defensive coordinator for the 49ers, he is this intense, emotional coach. He's a player's coach. It's the exact opposite of Gase, and I think that's going to be something interesting to watch this year as we see the Jets go forward. Their offensive line, it's improving. It hasn't been great, but it's improving, and drafting Elijah Vera Tucker is really going to help that line. But it does come down to Zach Wilson. They got him a few more weapons. Corey Davis, he was all right in Tennessee. I thought he was kind of a disappointment for the hype he had, but maybe, a new change of scenery could really help, jump his career. And Zach Wilson, he's not going to be afraid to throw the ball. We're not going to see a conservative style that Gase ran the past, couple of years for the Jets. The Jets are going to take chances this year. They have a lot of weapons. Wide receiver and running back is both deep. Maybe not the most talented guys in the world, but they're both deep. Mm-hmm. And I expect the Jets to, maybe be in more games than they were last year. But at the end of the day, I just can't convince myself that they're going to get over 6 wins.
Yeah, I think I'm riding the under, and looking at the top prop for them, I was stuck between Corey Davis and Denzel Mims. I'm going for the over receiving yards, but I don't trust Corey Davis over the full term here if he's going to be like a number one receiver, what they're going to do with him. I really like Denzel Mims. He really showed a lot in the draft process last offseason. Over 550 yards. I think that's free money. MereKat, what about you?
Yeah, we talked about this before. Well, I'm going under on 6 wins, first of all. I don't have faith in Zach Wilson. He's unsigned. He's already drumming up drama there in New York. Little Norman boy, dealing with New York media now. Last unsigned draft pick, just not a good look going into training camp. So already don't believe in Zach Darnold. But Robert Saleh, they made some good moves and stuff. I like them, but still, I don't think they get the 6 wins. And then we talked about this before. I'm on the same prop as you. Mims over 550 receiving yards, even money. That's great value there. Hate saying this about a young Jets playmaker, but Denzel Mims is, if he has a quarterback, is going to be a very, very good wide receiver in the NFL. He's going to be the number 2 behind Davis, I think, because they like him so much. They invested the capital into him, and he's flashed so much, even though the receiver room's a bit crowded right now with just guys. I still like him, and he only played 9 games as a rookie. He started the season on injured reserve, but he's big, he's super athletic, and he had 40 yards per game. Stretch that over 17 games, that's 1,680 yards, well over the prop, and I think he outperforms that this year. I see him around like 800 yards.
Yep, absolutely. MereKat, I love when we're on the same page. But let's hop over to the evil empire here, the New England Patriots. With their win total at 9.5 this year, Stevie, what the heck's going on with them?
So the Patriots, they did something we really haven't seen the Patriots do before, right? They said, we're just going to get as many free agents possible as we can. They actually spent the most money out of any team in the offseason, and they grabbed a couple tight ends, Hunter Henry, Jonnu Smith. They grabbed a couple receivers, Kendrick Bourne, Nelson Aguilar. And then the Patriots did something we've never seen the Patriots do, or Bill Belichick. They drafted the quarterback in the first round with Mac Jones. How long until he plays? That's a big question. But really with the Patriots here, it comes down to health, and it's a big improvement from last year. They had 8 players opt out last year because of COVID, and 4 of those guys were starters. Now they're back in the lineup. And it's going to make a big difference. You get Donta Hightower back, who is basically the leader of the defense. That's a huge addition. And not to mention, too, they traded for Trent Brown, who's going to help their offensive line immensely. I think the offensive line improves. But we've also heard that they want to, get away from Cam Newton running as much as he does. The Patriots really want to turn into more of a passing offense and rely on their running backs to run. And Damian Harris, in a limited sample size last year, in 10 games, he averaged 69 yards a game, 5 yards per carry. He can be the big, running back that they need to rely on, especially whether it's Newton or it's Mac Jones leading the offense. They have to rely on the running game at some point. The over-under is high at 9.5. It's very hard for me to convince myself that the Patriots will get 10 wins. But Belichick won 7 games last year with a roster that was half as talented as what he has now. Just my big question is, are these additions even that great? Is Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith like how you want to build a receiving core with Aguilar, Kendrick Bourne? I mean, I don't know. N'Keal Harry kind of looks like a bust from a couple of years ago. I don't know if there's enough weapons. I can't convince myself that they're going to get to 10 wins. I'm taking the under here. But at the end of the day, I don't want to bet against Bill Belichick. I never want to.
See, I agree with you too with like the weapons they added. They're not QB friendly receivers really,
Right.
and the tight ends. I don't mind Hunter Henry and Jonnu if they stay healthy, especially Hunter Henry. But you're not going to get Gronk Hernandez production out of them. Patriots fans, don't get too excited about that. And whether it's Cam or Mac, I still like the under on the 9.5 wins here. I think we saw last year. Not saying Belichick's not a good coach, he is, but the Brady versus Belichick argument. I mean, come on. Come on. It's over after last year.
Yeah.
You saw it. The Patriots were terrible. Brady won the Super Bowl. I'm fading the Patriots this year. And then you brought up Damian Harris, too. I think people are too high on him. I'm not saying he's not good. I'm not saying he's going to have a good season, but I'm fading him with my prop bet for this, for the Patriots. I'm going Damian Harris under 845.5 rushing yards. He looked good last year. The O-line's good, sure. But I haven't trusted the Patriots running back since Lawrence Maroney lost me my fantasy season in like 2008. But yeah, you never get consistency out of these guys. James White, sure, he's a receiver, but he's still going to take some carries. Sony Michel, they haven't gave up on him yet. He's still going to get touches. Harris last year, nearly half of his yards came in just 3 of the 10 games he played in. Some big performances, yes, but he only got 20 carries more one time over his whole time. So I'm fading Damian Harris and the Patriots.
Yeah, absolutely. Stevie, what was your top prop?
I'm actually going the opposite way, MereKat. I'm taking Damian Harris over. I really don't believe in Sony Michel. I don't think he's very good. And James White, yeah, he's going to have a role. He's just going to be a pass catcher. If the Patriots want to run the ball, it's going to be Damian Harris. And they said they don't want to run as much with Newton. They want to turn it to, a more traditional style offense where, you rely on the pass and then you run. And Harris was good last year when he ran the ball. I mean, in 10 games, he ran for 690 yards. He averaged 5 yards a carry. 845.5 yards. That just comes out to 49.7 yards a game. I think he can get to 50 yards a game if he stays healthy all year. And Harris, I think he's going to be a guy who could get 15 to 20 touches a game, and he's not a pass catcher. So when he's on the field, he's going to be running the ball. I'm going against you, MereKat. I'm sorry, but I'm taking over 845.5 yards.
Absolutely. Love to see it when the boys are going against each other. We'll see how this one ends up because MereKat's going to be tracking all these bets for us, some of these props and some of these picks throughout the season. And I can't wait till we have to go up against R2 Dartu, who is currently out on vacation right now. But it is time, folks, to hop over into the NFC least with the Philadelphia Eagles. Absolutely abysmal year for every single team in that division. But one thing I'll say is the one thing you could say about almost, each of these teams that had a bad season: injuries. 30th in overall team health, but most missed snaps at the tight end, offensive line, and or actually offensive line position, and then 30th in receiver and tight end. And what's that do? That's going to cause some issues for you in the passing game. So when I'm looking at this, is it the chicken or the egg? Who's at fault? Is it Carson Wentz? Is it the offense and some of these injuries? You look at it in 2019, they were a top half efficient offense, 14th, nothing crazy to write home about. And then they transitioned into 2020, 29th most efficient offense. You're missing Zach Ertz for a huge part of that season. But it did look like he was beginning to fall off. His yards per reception, his yak's been deteriorating the past few seasons as well. So that happens. And then Dallas Goedert looks like he's going to step in for him, and then he goes down with injury. So then you got Carson Wentz throwing to guys like Greg Ward and Travis Fulgham, and it's just kind of a shit show because Deshaun Jackson's injured and Alshon Jeffrey's injured. And what are you going to do? You have no offensive line. You come into the season, and I think 3 or 4 of the guys were out before the season even started. That's going to cause issues. You bring Jason Peters back to step in for one of those spots, and what happens? Jason Peters gets injured. You couldn't even write it at that point. But the biggest reason for, I think, their offensive woes last season, you look at their numbers on early down efficiency to get to third down. So their third down to go rate in 2019 was the 4th best. Last season, it was the 4th worst. and that's going to cause you a ton of issues. From 6.6 yards to go on third down to 7.3 doesn't seem like a lot, but it's huge. We talk about average 3 yards per carry. You want to average 3.5, because 3.5, like you're going over 10. So that's what you need to be doing, and they weren't able to do that last year. And now you have Jalen Hurts stepping in, 4 starts last year, bit of an up and down time for him. A great game against the Cardinals, where he had 3 touchdowns in a game where he was sacked 6 times. So we've seen, sort of the upside, but only 6 overall touchdowns, I believe, to 4 interceptions. So he was having some issues. But again, throwing to guys like Greg Ward and Travis Fulgham, et cetera, is going to be tough for anybody. So you go out, you get the Heisman Trophy winner, Devontae Smith. I think that's the biggest addition, and that is going to be huge for Jalen Hurts. Hopefully the two of them have some chemistry. Jalen did spend a little bit of time there in Alabama, so maybe the two know each other. They're going to be hopefully starting on the right foot, because that's what this offense needs. Over-under sitting at 6.5. I'm going with the under here. I don't think the Eagles did enough to get better. What do you do in free agency? Nothing big. And then you get Devontae Smith. Yes, that's huge. But you lost Alshon Jeffrey and Deshaun Jackson. You didn't do really anything to replace those guys with any big enough names. And Landon Dickerson will be nice to fill a hole. But so many other injuries these guys were coming off of, like torn Achilles, etc. And it's not like these guys were young. Yes, they were great linemen before, but coming off all these injuries, it's going to be very, very tough. So I'm going with the under. And my top prop is actually Jalen Hurts over 20.5 passing touchdowns. I think that's a very low number. You saw a 3 touchdown output, but you only need to average not even 2 a game throughout the season. 1.2, like not even 1.5, I don't think anymore now with 17 games if you play the full season. So I love that there. I don't know why that number is so low. I think they're sort of expecting him probably to use his legs a bunch, but I think 20.5 is very attainable as long as he remains starter throughout the season, which there's no reason to punt on him after, one season. So I don't think you really have like a backup, a young guy to go to. So I love that number there.
Well, you brought up his legs just there, maybe impacting his things. I'm just going to go right into that with my prop. I'm going Jalen Hurts over 655.5 rushing yards. Kind of a big number for a quarterback, but when you look at what he did last year, he averaged 68 yards per game. The 4 starts he had 272 rushing yards. Put that over 17 games, that's 1,150 yards. Now, am I expecting him to rush for 1,100 yards this year? No, they're going to cut that back a bit, especially now that he's cemented as the starter and all of that. They added passing options for him. Yeah, I don't think he's going to hit 1,100, but I think he can easily break the 655. He showed it. I believe in Jalen Hurts. I think his floor in the NFL is an average NFL passer and elite NFL quarterback rusher. And with that offense, he's got a shiny new toy in Devontae Smith. You brought that up. Jalen Reagor, a year in the league now, I think is good for him. I like him to have a good year this year. Fulgham, decent. Goddard and Ertz, not a bad combo there. And then, a massive addition they just made, 2 days ago for Steven Nelson. I mean, their secondary needed help. Darius Slay was out there on an island. He actually didn't have as bad of a season last year as people are making it out to be. He just needed some help in that secondary. Now he's got it with Steven Nelson, who I wish the Bills would have scooped up. So I am going with their over 6.5 wins to pair with my Hurts prop.
Stevie, what about you?
Well, MereKat took the exact prop I was going to do. We disagree on the last prop. We're on the exact same page for this one. I love the Hurts rushing yards. MereKat touched on all the points. I think Hurts is the second most talented rusher for quarterbacks in the NFL behind Lamar Jackson. He's elite. He's got great speed, and he can cut very quickly, just like a running back when you watch him. And I think Hurts is talented enough to keep the job for the whole year. Whether or not the Eagles are good is the question. And I think a lot of that comes down to the defense. And I'm not sold on the secondary. I'm not too sold on the Eagles defense improving. Like you said, Ty, they just didn't make enough moves this offseason to improve. What's good for the Eagles, the offensive line's getting healthier, which I think will also help the Hurts rushing prop. But it's just the defense is going to let them down, and I can't convince myself the Eagles over, because I actually kind of like the other 3 teams in the NFC least this year, but I'm taking the Eagles under 6.5 wins.
Yep, absolutely. I don't see it. I think a lot of these teams here in the NFC East, I don't think they've done enough to get better, but we'll get into that with some of these other teams. And the next one up is the Dallas Cowboys. Everyone knows Jerry is not very happy after last year's performance with an over-under sitting at 9. What do you guys see?
Well, when you talk about the Cowboys, it was just the most unlucky season last year, right? You have Dak Prescott, who was playing like an absolute world beater last year, averaging 422 yards a game before he had a horrible leg injury. And then after Dak got hurt, the linemen just dropped like flies. You didn't get a full season out of Zach Martin. Tyron Smith played 2 games. Al Collins was out for the year. It was just not a good situation for the Cowboys. And they're healthy this year. And I know every year, the public just buys into, the Cowboys are going to be good. The Cowboys are going to be contenders. And to a point, that's true. The Cowboys seem to disappoint every single year from expectations, but they added a lot of big pieces on the other side of the ball. They didn't have to change their offense. They just had to get healthy. Mm-hmm. But on defense, Malik Hooker, who they signed just a couple days ago, and Keanu Neal are 2 hybrid safeties I really, really like that I think is going to help out their secondary. I mean, exponentially make it better. And then you got Micah Parsons from Penn State. MereKat, I know you loved him going into the draft type. He's one of the most athletic linebackers we've seen in a long time. Mm-hmm. He's really going to, gel well with Jalen Smith, Leighton Vander Esch. The Cowboys defense, it just has to get a little bit better. It just can't be as bad because there's no chance that their offensive line is going to be 29th again. When you have a healthy Zach Martin, a healthy Tyron Smith, that is a very good offensive line. You've got one of the most talented running backs behind it with Ezekiel Elliott. And then Dak Prescott, who looked like he was on his way to a career season. We'll see how he comes back from the injury. It was not a good one. It was not just a cramp. It was a little bit more than a cramp. Prescott should bounce back big time, and he's got all the weapons around him. You've got CeeDee Lamb, who I am very, very high on. He's actually, my prop is over 1,050.5 receiving yards for CeeDee Lamb. He averaged 86.5 yards when Dak played in the games Dak played in. That comes out to 1,472 yards over a full season. He still finished with 935 yards last year, despite how bad the quarterback play was after Dak. He was terrible. I mean, Andy Dalton, who people called, a serviceable backup, just kind of tarnished all that last year. He was even worse.
I will blame some of that into the play calling and them running into terrible situations. Like you had your running backs with the lowest yards per before contact or whatever. It was just brutal for anyone to get things going, and they kept doing it over and over again. And then you weren't opening anything up in the passing game. You just didn't trust Andy Dalton to do anything, which is something you should have done with DiNucci, not Dalton. And then when you let him do some things, he had a little bit of success. And then what did he do? Get that concussion.
Right. And it was a combination of, bad quarterback play with an injured offensive line. That's just never going to work well. The Cowboys are healthy this year. I know it's a little juicy. I like the over 9 at -140. I love the CeeDee Lamb prop. I'm actually hammering that one, 1,050 yards. He's a receiver, I think, who has the talent to become one of the best receivers in the NFL. He bonded well with Dak. The Cowboys are using him at 4 different receiving positions this offseason. They want to get him the ball no matter what. And Amari Cooper right now is on the PUP list. He may be back in time for the start of the regular season. They said he will be, but it's an ankle injury. You know how those linger, and we know Amari Cooper, he gets hurt every now and then. I'm hammering CeeDee Lamb over, and I do like the Cowboys over 9, although I feel like that's such a public number.
So I don't disagree with a lot of what you said. I like their offense a lot. If Dak is healthy, if the offensive line is healthy, they're going to be an explosive offense. Defensive additions, Micah Parsons, my draft baby. I hate he went to the Cowboys because they don't know how to use their linebackers. They have 2 of the best linebackers.
That's why I'm so happy this card's in the Penn State jersey.
With Jalen Smith and Vander Esch, and they just don't utilize them right at all. They don't get the production they should be getting out of them. And some of these signings they're making in the secondary don't make sense to me. They should be signing a corner. Your number 1 corner is Trevon Diggs right now, and your number 2 is Anthony Brown. But what do? They signed DeMonte Kazee and Malik Hooker, who are both free safeties. So one of them is going to be playing out of position at strong safety. And Keanu Neal, they're just putting at strong side linebacker where he's going to be a backup. It's just this idiocy. And it's all because they're coach is Mike McCarthy. That's why I'm taking the under 9 yards. He's just an idiot. I don't understand. Like, I don't care how good this offense is. As long as Mike McCarthy's this coach, I don't think they break 8 wins. And
I don't think so either.
I'm going to go with Ezekiel Elliott over 1,100.5 rushing yards. I think he's got a bounce back year this year. Last year, you saw they definitely were managing him. I don't think it was just idiotic play calling. It's like, hey, his carries dropped week by week, and not only because of performance, because I think they were just like, all right, we're dead. Let's kind of wait for Dak to come back next year. All of that because he only had 2 more carries in the game he played 10 game or the year he played 10 games in his sophomore season. Every other year he shattered what he's had last year. And if he averaged 65.3 yards last year on those little amount of carries, throw that over 17 games. That's over 1,100 right there. And I still think he far outperforms what he did last year. So I like the Zeke over rushing prop, but the Cowboys under as a team. Not that this offense is going to have fantasy stars and all of that and be productive, but as long as their coach is just an idiot and their defense isn't put together right, it's like a puzzle out of place. I don't trust it.
They're only going to win if they're able to outgun teams. That's going to be their problem. So if their offensive line can bounce back, you give Dak time. You're hoping you have the weapons to be able to do it. Dak is obviously, playing for a big contract. Like he's been betting on himself, and the Cowboys don't seem to believe in him. So, we'll see how that goes too, because I don't think Mike McCarthy really believes in him either. And I'm with you on the under, MereKat. I just do not trust the Dallas Cowboys because of Mike McCarthy. And it was the same reason I didn't trust him a few years ago because of Jason Garrett. We'll see if they fix it, but I don't trust it. And we're getting back over to New Jersey with the Giants.
So the Giants they're one of the most, I think, polarizing teams. Either people hate them or they love them this year. The Giants, they made a lot of moves this offseason. They got Kenny Galladay. They got John Ross. They got Kyle Rudolph to add weapons. They also drafted Kadarius Toney, who I think is a really good wideout. And then they added on the defensive end, too. Danny Shelton, Reggie Ragland, Adoree Jackson. I mean, these are guys that, can, have roles for the Giants. And I feel like, we're saying the same thing every time, but it comes down to the quarterback play again, right? I mean, Daniel Jones, do you love him or do you hate him? Do you think he can, take the next step, or do you think they're just wasting a season with Daniel Jones? And it's really hard to tell there because Daniel Jones, in my opinion, I think there's times where he looks absolutely brilliant. Like, this is a guy I want to, build a team around. And then there's times where it looks like he's never thrown a football before in his life. He's had a fumble problem throughout his career, and it doesn't help that the Giants' offensive line is absolutely miserable. It's not good. But the Giants are giving Daniel Jones weapons this year. They're giving him chances to succeed. And I mean, you look at, if Barkley's healthy, you got Saquon Barkley, you got Kenny Galladay, you got Darius Slayton, Sterling Shepard. Now you got the rookie Kadarius Toney with Evan Ingram and Kyle Rudolph as your tight ends. That is a great group of offensive weapons. And Daniel Jones, he can also be a weapon himself. He can run. Last year he ran for 423 yards, 6.5 yards per carry. Daniel Jones is much more athletic than people think. The defense for the Giants, pretty good. 9th in points allowed last year, 10th in rush defense, 17th in pass defense. I like their defensive line of Dexter Lawrence, Danny Shelton, and Leonard Williams. I think it's pretty good. And then their secondary did improve. They signed Adoree Jackson, who's an okay corner. They drafted Aaron Robinson, a rookie corner that should help the secondary immediately. And then it goes along with James Bradbury, Jabril Peppers, Logan Ryan. It's not a bad defense. So the Giants, to me, it really comes down to Daniel Jones and the offensive line. The offensive line was ranked 31st last year. That's not good. And you can't have a bad offensive line when you have a quarterback who, is mistake prone, who can turn the ball over a lot. And Daniel Jones last year was 35th in completion percentage, over expected out of all quarterbacks. Not good at all. These weapons, I think, will help him. And the over-under is sitting at 7. I don't love the Eagles too much. I said I'd take the Cowboys over, but I don't think they're going to smash it. I think they'll be right around the number. I actually kind of like the Giants to get to the over. I think they can get 3 to 4 division wins. And then they also play the Falcons this year, the Broncos, the Panthers, the Raiders, the Bears, and the Dolphins as well. Those are winnable games. I think the offensive line has to get better than it was last year. It can't get worse. And Daniel Jones has all the weapons now to take that next step. Will he is the question. I am on the slight side of a Daniel Jones believer. I don't hate the guy, but I also don't think he's the worst quarterback in the NFL. I think he's all right. And if Saquon Barkley is healthy, that's another explosive playmaker that changes games. I know running backs don't, equate to wins most of the time, but Saquon Barkley is one of the few guys that can really change a game while he's on the field. And Kenny Golladay, the most underrated receiver in the NFL. He was top 20 of PFF rankings the past 3 seasons. That's the number one weapon that they need to be successful. I think the Giants' offense improves dramatically, and their defense is actually sneaky good. So I'm taking the over 7.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a team in this NFC least division. One of these teams, not named the Cowboys, that has one of these lower totals, that's going to just feast within the division just because some of these teams are bad. Like, I think we're going to see not as marked of an improvement as some of the teams expect. They're going to get beat up on, but we'll see how that goes. I'm going to have to get out of here. I got to go call some balls and strikes and some outs. Hopefully lots of outs, hopefully lots of strikes. But one thing I got to say, going with this, Giants, if you can figure out how to throw the ball, you can have a good team. You had great, efficient running game last year, even with Saquon Barkley being hurt. So hopefully they'll figure things out passing. And for the Washington football team, Ryan Fitzpatrick, what the hell? On that note, I'm out.
So for the Giants, I'm going on their under actually for the wins, fading you there. It's another thing where it's coming down to one guy for me, and that's Daniel Jones, and he kind of regressed in production from a rookie to a sophomore in this league, which you hate to see. Even though he did cut the turnovers down, they were still pretty prevalent. A 12-10 touchdown ratio, and then he went from 18 to 11 fumbles. Like, that's 11 fumbles is still awful.
Yeah,
I know
that's a lot.
Allen fumbling a lot, but Jones is losing a lot of his fumbles, so I don't love it, honestly. But yeah, they made a lot of strides. Their defense is sound, and I don't know. Can that offensive line hold up? Can Daniel Jones take that step? We're going to have to see, but I'm going for my prop. I know you brought up Rudolph as an addition, but I'm still going with Evan Ingram over 54.5 receptions. Rudolph, his age has really, really caught up to him these last couple seasons, and I don't see him being much of a threat after, Ingram finally stayed healthy for a whole season last year, which is incredible for him. People still want to see more out of him. He only had 1 touchdown, but still 63 catches for 654 yards. He showed he could be healthy, developed that chemistry with Daniel Jones, kind of acted as a safety blanket. But I don't know. I'm going to go with that over 54.5. It just seems like a low number there after what he did last year, what he did as a rookie, the 2 seasons he wasn't hurt. And I don't think Rudolph takes that much away from him. But
MereKat, you ready for my prop?
Yeah,
I'm going with Evan Ingram under 54.5 receptions. His catch rate last year was absolutely miserable, 57.8%. And I just think the Giants added so many weapons. And if Barkley is healthy, he's going to take a lot of those check down looks that Ingram had last year. Ingram was basically the go-to guy for most of the part last year. They had so many injuries in the receiving core. And now you have, Shepard's healthy, Slayton's healthy. You add Kenny Golladay, even have John Ross as like their 5th option. If Barkley's healthy, he takes them. And Devonta Booker is a backup running back. Could take some receptions as well. He can catch the ball. I know. I don't believe in Evan Ingram. I think he's an athletic freak. I just don't think he's a great football player. So that's why I'm taking the under. I'm going against you.
Well, we're going to see at the end of the season with all
That's
this fading of each other is going to go. But up next, and our last team for this preview is the Washington football team. Still no name. I'm personally rooting for the Red Wolves. I like that. They can get some badass logos out of that. And their total is set at 8.5 right now. Not going to lie, I'm taking the over, but I don't love it. But I'm taking the over. I believe in this Washington football team. The 7-9 division winners of the NFC, at least. You got to give them some credit. But I do think they improved this season. Not much, but adding Ryan Fitzpatrick at least gives them consistency at quarterback as long as he's healthy. I don't see Taylor Heineke really pushing him, even though he had that flash there last year. Everybody got behind him. I just think with that QB stability, Fitz, can be called upon to be productive with that receiving core. Terry McLaurin is a great receiver who I wish had a great quarterback with him. Curtis Samuel, even though he's injured right now, kind of questionable, I believe, to start the season, showed, he could switch from a running back to a wide receiver in Carolina and be a top receiver. So that was a good pickup. Adam Humphries, another solid pickup, a guy who's just been consistent his whole career. It is a body. And I love the draft pick, Diami Brown. I think they got a steal there with him and re-signing Logan Thomas, the deal that you got him at after, one of the rare Brandon Bean misses was just saying, hey, Logan Thomas, I tell you that's not going to work out. Washington said, no, watch out. And he turned into a red zone monster. So I like him this year. And you look at those key numbers, though. Their defense was fine last year. Maybe the best defensive line in football. I'd probably say it's my favorite defensive line in football. They upgraded the front seven in general a bit by adding Jamon Davis in the first round. He's a guy who could bounce all around the field, be used in a number of ways, so I like him in that position for them. And then William Jackson to shore up that secondary a little bit was a huge underrated pickup, I believe, as well. Getting Eric Flowers in a trade to shore up that offensive line to keep Ryan Fitzpatrick healthy, because let's face it, he's 38 years old. I just like how things are playing out for Washington's offense to pair with this, defense, which showed last year. It's a very good defense. If you get pass rush in this league, your secondary doesn't need to be elite. They just need to be good enough, which Washington has. The offense just needs to pick it up, which Fitzpatrick's maybe had his best 2 years in the NFL in the past 2 seasons with the Dolphins and the games he's played. Last year, he was great. So put him with these receivers now, offensive line, with Ron Rivera. I'm sure him and Rivera are like friends right now, like going on double dates with their wives. So I'm going over on Washington's win total. Stevie, what's your thoughts on this?
I actually like the over too, maybe slightly over. I don't think they're going to smash it.
I think it's like 9. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're right around 9. The big thing for me, MereKat, I think they have the best front four in all of football. You've got Chase Young, Montez Sweat, Jonathan Allen, and Darren Payne. That causes a lot of issues for opposing quarterbacks, and their offense was terrible last year. They did not get good QB play. One thing we know about Fitzpatrick, he likes to take chances. 5 of the last 6 years, he was top 10 in average depth of target. He's going to throw the ball down the field. He's going to take chances, and he'll have games where he has 3-4 interceptions. It's just miserable. But he'll also have other games where he throws over 400 yards and 3 touchdowns, and that's something Washington didn't get last season. I think they get that this year. Antonio Gibson, I think, is a very talented running back. It'll be nice to see him in his second year, have the number 1 back role throughout the season. And you touched on him. This is where my prop is. Terry McLaurin. He's one of the best receivers in football, one of the best young receivers. I loved him at Ohio State. I love him even more in the NFL. And his yardage for the prop is only 1,180.5 yards. That's 69 yards a game. I think he absolutely smashes it. Since he's been in the NFL, he's had 41% of the air yards for Washington, and that's playing with conservative quarterbacks that don't throw the ball down the field. Guess what? Fitzpatrick's the exact opposite of that. He's going to have a lot of long bomb touchdowns to McLaurin, and McLaurin's the go-to guy there. I love it over 1,180.5 yards. I believe it's at -115. Terry McLaurin, one of my favorite players in fantasy this year, one of my favorite props to bet on. And Washington, if that offense improves just a little bit, I think they can get to the over pretty easily. I like the over 8.5 as well.
I like your prop. I'm going to bounce off of someone you brought up too, who I did in my preview for my prop. I'm going with Antonio Gibson over 1,300.5 receiving plus rushing yards this season at -115. Last year, his rushing plus receiving yards in the 13 games he was healthy was 1,028, and that's as a rookie. who was drafted as a wide receiver and shifted to running back. He had very limited amount of rushes in college. He was a legitimate receiver and drafted as so, and then switched immediately in a defunct offense that was being rushed between the tackles, even though he's not that type of running back, even though he's not a running back. He still produced, and I know a large chunk of that production did come in a three games of it. Which scares me a little bit, but I think he's going to be such a focal point of this offense. Ron Rivera has nothing but praise for him, and he, like I said, he just showed it last year. I think last year is kind of his floor. Like, we already see his floor just based off of how much they're going to use him and what he can, just flash at times on the field. I like Antonio Gibson's over this year, but that wraps it up for this preview, folks. We covered AFC East and NFC East. We got your team totals. We got your player props. We're going to be doing this the next 3 weeks, going through, each cardinal direction of the divisions. Next week, I'm just throwing it out right now. We're just going to do what? AFC South, NFC South. I just decided for us. That's what we're doing next week. You're going to get 3 more weeks of these previews, and then we're going to go into, Super Bowl winners, MVP winners, teams to make and miss playoffs, more deep props leading us directly into the season where you're going to be seeing us twice a week, breaking down the entire slate every single week. We're going to be tracking all of this for you guys. So, you want to fade us, you want to ride with us, you want to just call us out on Twitter for not being great gamblers, go ahead. We're ready for it, but we're ready to keep giving you guys our picks heading into this football season. And I just got one more thing to say. Good night now. Until the